Good morning, gamers. Welcome to Critical Damage Season 4, Emerson's best esports talk show. I'm Michael McMahon with my hosts.
I'm Sam Hinton.
And I'm Ethan Tilley, also known as ET.
And folks, I just gotta say, we've got a stellar show planned out for you guys. So sit back, relax, and welcome to Critical Damage. I'm gonna send it over to Sam to introduce our first topic of the day.
So, content's a pretty big buzzword in the entertainment industry, especially when it comes to gaming. But what type of content truly reigns supreme? Quality content or just loads of quantity?
So I think that when it comes to content, I think the streamers and the creators, I think they've got it down. I mean, like, if someone doesn't like what they're producing, even if it's just low quality, just get it on air, I think that's fine. I mean, if people don't like it, they're not gonna watch it.
So, you just think consistency is more the brand?
I feel like so. I mean, they're business people. It's not their job to create the best content for people to watch. I feel like they just got to put it out there, and if it's well received, it's well received.
That's true, but in a way, it's very easy to tell which content has a lot more work put into it in a way, because if you have content that takes a while to produce, and you have content that's clearly created in order to be like this great spectacle, it's a lot different from being like quality over quantity. You know what I mean? You have these YouTubers producing stuff every single day, like hitting that 10-minute mark to make sure they get that ad revenue. But then you have these other YouTubers that are creating, spending months on projects in order for these massive, 45-minute videos just to be like this massive spectacle. And it's amazing when they upload because it gives the viewer something to look forward to.
I definitely think of like Mr. Beast when it comes to those long-term quality videos, because you think of like his Squid Game series that he made, or like the content of just like how long can you stay here and get this amazing present. Like, it just seems like there's something with those sort of large quality projects that really attracts a lot of people.
That's true, but like also we can't hold every content creator to that like same standard, especially when it comes to like video games and stuff. We don't want every single video to be this like 2-month long heavy project. Like sometimes you just want to see someone back on camera again. Low quality but just high quantity videos have a place. I don't feel like they should just be overshadowed.
Well, that's the thing, though. Is it low quality at the end of the day? If it's created, you don't want a video to be low quality. I don't think any creator wants their video to be low quality, but being forced to pump out that much content, creating videos every single day, I mean, that could take a toll on someone, and it honestly may lower the quality of their work. And at the end of the day, if you're a creator, you want your quality to be the best it can possibly be.
Yeah, and mental health is definitely important when it comes to the industry. Like, you got to take breaks sometimes. And also when it comes to these sort of like large quantity content creators, especially streamers, a lot of them have really good quality graphics and emotes and all those sort of things so they can get engagement from the audience. And if I feel like if those were low quality, they would get much less of a reaction from their audience, or maybe less followers.
I agree, but when you look at streamers and stuff, especially streamers like XQC and Pokimane, their brand is really made on just their face being out there. I feel like if they're taking these major gaps, the brand that they've developed isn't really gonna follow through, especially on platforms like Twitch that reward people from streaming consistently and having those high viewer counts. I don't think there's anything wrong with them. Like, even if they're just doing basic or sometimes minimal content, as long as they're just getting their face out there. I mean, it's being rewarded by the platform they're streaming on.
I mean, that's the thing, though. When you're talking about Twitch, you got to think about the whole gambling controversy that was happening and how, Twitch had to ban gambling from their sites because a lot of these streamers just decided, we're just going to stream gambling. We're just going to gamble on our streams, and it's super easy to do. It's super low effort. But at the end of the day, it's pretty low quality, and it honestly influences a lot of these children that are watching it into getting into gambling as well. So when you get that really low quality content that you sort of mass produce, a lot of it can be very controversial because it's sort of taking the easy way out.
But that easy way out, I mean, it's not that they're being rewarded for it. All they're doing is that they're just wanting to create content. They're trying to get their name out. If they're being rewarded for it, and if people are watching it, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Them being rewarded for it. Them being rewarded for it is money. It's all about money at the end of the day. And gambling streams like that, they bring in a lot of money from not only just the viewers watching, but from sponsorships as well. And at that point, you got to think about sort of what is the quality of the content you're watching? Because if you're watching a sponsored stream for this gambling website, then is it really just watching the content the creator is making, or is it just watching an advertisement for that site?
And even when it comes to that sort of low content, I feel like there's something to say about when it comes to like especially like gambling and things like that, like safety when it comes to these sorts of streams. Because if you're influencing like young children that may be your audience, that's really not the way to go. We've seen a bunch of issues when it comes to children with things like loot boxes and kind of gotcha and like that sort of like kind of almost gambling, but not so much, where like games and publishers have had to put out like warnings to younger children. And I think Twitch is just unfortunately a really good kind of audience where you can get the audience to be young children and introduce them to gambling without a sort of safeguard. So for Twitch to do kind of just like a hey, we won't allow this kind of content anymore or kind of put a damper on it is good, but I don't know if it says that there can't be other sorts of good low quality content.
Well, speaking of Twitch then, what about the whole pursuit of the meta that's very common on Twitch streamers now? I mean, like, I feel like the pursuit of a meta is inherently not a bad thing, especially when these streamers are making a livelihood from their viewers. I don't think there's anything wrong with them pursuing maybe sometimes a lower quality thing as long as they're trying to get a livelihood from it. I mean, like, again, if people don't like it, they just won't watch it, especially if you come to things like some streamers streaming like entire TV shows. Like, sure, yeah, it might not be the greatest thing to do, but at the end of the day, it's their livelihood that they're trying to support. And I mean, like, until they hit a boundary, I don't see anything wrong with it.
I mean, yeah, when you think about like especially starting streamers, they have to go in with both quality and quantity. They can't afford to do forfeit either, really, because if they're trying to get a good audience, they definitely need to start out with a lot of quantity because they're trying to gather that audience, but it also needs to look good and feel good and gather in that audience. So it needs to be high quality as well. And so I feel like when it comes to like more famous, like more followed streamers, they can definitely get away with low quality content. But when it comes to like smaller streamers or streamers that are trying to build their brand, they especially need to go in with higher quality content. So I also think it depends on where you're at in your streaming career.
I think I can agree with that sentiment, especially with Twitch changing their policy, with smaller streamers now having more access to partnership and being able to live off their streaming. I feel like it's definitely more rewarding towards them. But like, I don't know. I feel like I can't get mad at a streamer for just playing the game as best they can.
Yeah, it's tough to argue because you have, streamers who are trying to make as much money as possible, but then you also have streamers putting their life and soul into the actual content they create. And it's honestly, when I'm watching Twitch, I think there's a pretty clear difference between the two. When I'm watching them, like it's very clear which streamers are just, trying to make as much money as they can. And while their content's still enjoyable to so many people, it's clearly that like that's the forefront of their mind almost. But there, you have a lot of these smaller streamers who, again, put quality over quantity, but sometimes it's not rewarded by the meta, and it's not rewarded by Twitch, because you have to follow the meta in order to, actually get big and actually get famous and actually make money off of it. So sometimes, even though people may prefer like higher quality videos, higher quality streams over just having more of it, it may not necessarily be the right way to make money for a lot of streamers or YouTubers.
Well, then, going off that sentiment, what about Jay Schlatt and Ludwig? I mean, they just undertook a project where they're gonna release copyrighted music made by professional musicians for free on YouTube, but they're not really getting any reward out of that. Even though it's such high quality, the amount of effort and money they have to put into that, was it really worth it?
I think the reward is being recognized by your followers for helping out other streamers because they really are some really big figures in the streaming industry. And I think by being like, hey, here's some music that you all can use, not only is that music being recognized as music that they helped create, but it's also showing that they support the streaming industry and the community and all these other smaller streamers out there who need to find music that can work for them. And so I think it's more so, it wasn't really for money, it was more so for word of mouth and support from your audience.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that Jay Schlatt and Ludwig are probably two of the biggest streamers just on the planet right now. They're really, really famous, or really, really popular, and right now I don't think money is that much of an issue for them. And because of that, they can afford to invest in stuff like this, invest in all of these different projects where, they can afford to lose out on money by doing it. Because at the end of the day, it gives them really good publicity, and it gives them, again, really good viewership as well. So people hear an article about how Ludwig and Jay Schlatt are doing that. They're like, wow, these guys are great. They're really cool. They're really benefiting the streaming community. Now I'm going to go watch them on Twitch or YouTube, and basically be like, oh, wow, now I really enjoy these streams. It's just another way to advertise themselves in a way. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a really, really good thing that they're doing. And it is very high quality content as well because of all the money put in. So it's just important to know that they already have the ability to do that. It's not necessarily an option for like smaller streamers as well.
But then with them, like, especially because they already have that developed platform, and by no means am I gonna condemn them for doing whatever they want on their platform. I mean, like, they can do that. But when they come to this idea of this high quality content, like, sometimes it can just fall short. I mean, like, especially with that, if you look into it more, they're not getting a great return on that. So at the end of the day, morally right, yes, but was it really worth it?
The return is how their audience is going to see it, which is good publicity and a really good kind of, I guess the best way I can explain it is, say that a smaller streamer is streaming and they hear the music that's going on, and a lot of streamers audiences tend to ask what music's playing. They can find out that, oh, it's from this collaboration with Jay Schlatt and Ludwig and some orchestras, and it gives them publicity and it makes them look good. And good publicity is something that all streamers want because it leads more people to their feed. And it's not so much that they're getting money back from the music, it's that they're gathering more audience, which is going to give them more money. So it is a return. It's a longer return for sure, but they can afford to do that as people who already have a really good cash flow coming in.
I can't help but agree with what you're saying. I mean, high quality content, I mean, I won't lie. I see Mr. Beast's Squid Game. I'll click on that video. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. But I think that for a lot of people, I think low quality content, even if it's not a Squid Game level thing, it just works.
I don't think there's something to say with low quality content when it also comes to like your comfort streamers as well. If there's someone who you've supported for a very long time and you just enjoyed them as a person, wanting to support them and watch their lower quality streams is something that you can do. And it's a way that you can kind of spend time with the streamer without having to wait days and days to see that streamer.
Yeah, I think it's also important to know the distinction between low and high quality content. Just because a video is shorter, just because a stream is shorter, doesn't have as many graphics on it, doesn't mean it's necessarily lower quality. It just means that's what the streamer wants for it. And again, yeah, following famous streamers, following the streamers and YouTubers that you really like watching, at the end of the day, that's really what you want to do anyway. And no matter what content they're producing, I feel like a lot of fans of streamers will just watch them no matter what content they produce. So even though some quality may be deemed as higher or lower quality, I think it really just comes down to personal preference.
Should we analyze that a bit more though? I mean, like, if a streamer has an audience, no matter what they produce, does their content matter at that point?
I feel like content still matters no matter what, because if you want to keep that audience, you need to keep the quality that you're at. You can go above that, you can go slightly below that, but you definitely want to keep kind of a steady stream of, this is the kind of content that I'm going to produce. These are the different types of quality that they're going to be, and this is how often my schedule is going to be. And obviously account for like breaks and mental health and things like that. But you kind of want to figure out with your audience what works and what doesn't. So definitely pay attention to the meta, but at the same time, what works for you and what can you afford as a streamer and how will your audience react to this?
It is a balancing act. I mean, you can't really sacrifice too much quality, you can't really sacrifice too much quantity, but you also want to make sure, A, you're creating the best content you're possibly making, and B, that content's actually being watched by people. And you can't really, it's tough to balance all of that because as a streamer, it's a lot of work to actually put in that much time into creating streams and videos and all of that sort of thing. So it's one of those things where you really gotta like balance how much you actually do and make sure you're actually taking care of yourself as well.
I get what you're saying. I don't know. I feel like it just comes down to the streamer at that point. Anyway, now to take a pause from our discussion, let's throw it over to Jack Reiber from First Frame News.
Hello and welcome to First Frame News. My name is Jack Reiber and I'll be walking you through the biggest headlines in the gaming world. Speaking of content creators, a new challenger approaches YouTube's community of game designers. Director Masahiro Sakurai has his own YouTube channel called Masahiro Sakurai on Creating Games. Beginning about a month ago, the Kirby creator and Super Smash Bros. Director shares his experience and design philosophy on game development. These educational episodes go live every 3 to 4 days a week. Given Sakurai-san's work ethic and no public projects in the works, it's no surprise that he's keeping himself busy in the most wholesome way possible. Thank you for sharing your gifts with us, Mr. Sakurai. And now to shed light on another of Nintendo's talented workers, one with none of the recognition they deserve. In late September, former Nintendo employee Mackenzie Clifton spoke with Axios to advocate for Nintendo staff unions. Clifton was a playtester for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate since its development in 2018. Thousands of hours of labor went uncredited upon the game's release. Clifton and all of Ultimate's playtesters were absent from the game's credits. Clifton left the company and filed a complaint against Nintendo to, quote, show the world and show my former coworkers that something like a union could not only be beneficial, but maybe even necessary in the coming years. The Nintendo Labor Relations Board continues to settle the complaint to Clifton and continues to wait for a letter of apology from Nintendo of America. In lighter news, Half-Life 2 is in VR. The 2004 classic is faithfully recreated in virtual reality by modder Nathan Andrews. Andrews began this project 10 years ago with Sony HMZ T1 and specialized motion tracking gear. This is 2012, by the way, a time in which the PlayStation VR, Oculus Rift, and Vives are 4 years away. With this precursor technology and the help of the Source VR mod team, Andrews' pioneering dream is a modern marvel of virtual reality. And did I forget to mention it's free? The beta for the mod is available to download on Steam, so go play it. And on to our final story. Square Enix embraces the $70 game model. Both Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade and Forspoken are both coming to the Epic Games Store and Steam, with a $70 price tag. Square is the first major company to charge $70 for a base game on PC. The increase in price for base games has been a growing trend since the PlayStation 5 hit shelves in 2020, with The Last of Us Part 1, God of War Ragnarok, and Modern Warfare 2 being recent examples. More on the modern market of gaming is Michael back at the desk. But before you go anywhere, here's a personal prediction on the Mario movie. You'll all love Chris Pratt as Mario when the movie hits theaters this April. That's all for First Frame News. I'm Jack Reiber, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks, Jack. And God, does it really cost that much just to enjoy a game nowadays? Like, Sam, what are your thoughts on it?
I don't know, because there's two definitely big versions of games that we can talk about, which is free to play, where obviously it's free to play, but there's other content walls that you have to pay to get behind. Or there's pay to play, where you just pay an upfront cost, like the $70, and then go from there. So I guess really, what are your guys' thoughts on free to play versus pay to play?
I mean, look, let's talk about free-to-play games first. I mean, it's pretty much the biggest, I'd say, method of playing games, especially for online multiplayer games nowadays. For games like, Overwatch, Valorant, Call of Duty, all of these games are free. And you can't, even though it doesn't cost money to actually play the game, it has cosmetics and all these other games, or not all these other games, but all these other cosmetics and all this other content that you have to pay for. And it's pretty controversial, I'll say, nowadays, especially now that Overwatch 2 is released and people are not happy now that it's free.
Yeah, I'll say a lot of skins, a lot of battle passes.
Yeah, battle passes especially, so.
I don't know. I can't seem to really get behind free-to-play. I mean, I feel like a lot of developers these days are just using a free-to-play idea as just a cop-out for releasing kind of unfinished games or just, low content. I mean, all due respect to Fortnite, I feel like they had a really good idea going, especially they had Save the World, but then when they released Battle Royale, it was free. There's nothing wrong with that. And we got to give respect to them. I think they were probably the first big platform to really hit that free-to-play market with cosmetics and Battle Pass. But I feel like as just more games have come out following the trend, I feel like the just quality of it has just gone down. I don't know. I think I'd just rather pay just an upfront cost, even at $70 for just a finished game.
Definitely some solid examples. Destiny, Wizards 101, if we're looking for a classic. But I don't know. I feel like there's something fun to say about being able to get these skins and cosmetics and being able to have access overall to the game as opposed to having to pay that upfront cost.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Even though you'd rather pay $60, $70 for a game up front, I'm sure a lot of people wouldn't. It's one of those pretty big paywalls to even playing the game in the first place. And being free to play means it's available to so many different people who wouldn't be able to pay for the game otherwise. And yes, you have cosmetics and all these things available in game that you have to pay for if you want to use them, but being able to just play the game outright for free, that's a pretty big deal. That makes it available to a lot more people, and you don't necessarily have to buy the cosmetics if you don't want to.
But I mean, like, if you look at like older games, I mean, like, even if they were like a buy-in, like if you look at like classic Call of Duty, for example, the $60 like game, but weapon skins and like variations of ways to get items, even if there were like supply drops you had to buy, you could earn them so much easier. I didn't have to spend $10 every 2 months to get a couple skins that I could do a couple challenges for in older games to get. I feel like it's just Battle Pass and free to play are just being used as a new way to just suck consumers out of their money.
Yeah, definitely a solid example of that too is the old Overwatch, where you just had to pay that up front, and then you would have to do a few challenges a week for possibly new events. But you'd be able to earn these loot boxes through just playing, and then you obviously could buy them, but you can also earn them. And then you could get all of those skins and that content for free. And now we have this battle pass, and you have to buy all of those skins. And obviously, thankfully, if you had the old Overwatch, you got to keep all of your content. What does that say for like the new players that are coming into this free to play and now have to deal with this battle pass when they've heard so much other stuff?
Yeah, let's talk Overwatch for a minute, because that's probably the biggest, game that's come out in the past, I don't know, couple weeks or so. So so let's talk about this, right? Because when you think about old Overwatch, you were talking about like, yeah, you can earn every cosmetic basically for free in the game just by playing it. You get a loot box every single time you level up, and you get, legendaries pretty frequently. They have a system in place where they don't really let you get duplicates too often, which is pretty fair to the consumer, I'd like to say. But at the end of the day, if you are earning every cosmetic for free in game, you're not going to be buying loot boxes. Because, I mean, how many people do you guys know actually bought loot boxes in Overwatch? It's not that many. Because, again, it's so consumer friendly that you're able to earn everything in game in the first place. But because of that, how much money are the devs actually making from that? Because you pay the upfront cost of what, like 40 bucks, I believe, for Overwatch. But then after that, you earn everything for free. You're not actually paying any more for the game. So eventually, once people stop buying the initial cost of Overwatch, you're not really making that much more money elsewise, because people aren't buying loot boxes because you're earning them all for free. And at that point, it gets harder to develop a game because less money is actually being put into it.
I can agree with that sentiment, but I feel like that's just more consumer friendly. I mean, like, if I can give 60 bucks, 40 bucks now, and then never have to worry about giving another dollar again, and I can still get the full range of content, I think I'd be fine with that, instead of having to put $10, $15, even investing more money into a certain skin in the shop I want. And we don't even have to just talk about cosmetics. Within Overwatch 2, now you have to complete the battle pass to unlock characters. Even if they're coming out at like after a season, that's 60 days in a game that's made around picking characters to counterbalance. That's just, I don't know, that just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense that any of us, or the consumer, would much rather just pay an upfront cost and get all the cosmetics in for free. But I mean, it's not really sustainable, as we saw with Overwatch. The last character before Overwatch 2 was released was Echo. And Echo was released in 2019.
It's been a minute.
I believe, 2019. And we got no other characters, no other maps.
Well, we got Kanazaka. Hold on.
Oh yes, Kanazaka, the deathmatch.
It was a map, technically.
It was a deathmatch map, yes. But a lot of people were complaining. Overwatch wasn't receiving content. Overwatch wasn't getting updated. And a lot of that, I'm pretty sure, is just because they didn't have the money to put into the game because of that. Because people weren't buying loot boxes. People weren't buying Overwatch anymore because they weren't making new content, and it just had run its course at that point. So I think it's important to realize that while for us, we'd all love to just be able to earn everything in game, and while it would make a lot more consumer-friendly sense to do so, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that may make it pretty tough to actually do that. And I do agree, though, that locking actual gameplay content behind the paywalls is just not a good idea in general, because the main proponent of free-to-play games is these cosmetics. And I think cosmetics is the best way to actually fund a free-to-play game, because cosmetics, they don't affect gameplay, and you don't have to get them if you don't want them. However, when you start introducing things like actual game mechanics, actual game characters, and like weapons and things behind paywalls, then you run into the issue of the game being pay to win. And you don't want some people who have more money to go and pay for all the most overpowered weapons and characters, and then the people who don't pay don't have access and therefore just lose the game more, because that's how you kill a player base because people won't want to play because they don't want to pay just to be good at the game.
I think we definitely sounds like we all agree on the whole character should not be put behind paywalls.
I agree. That's just a silly concept in and of itself.
Yeah, but especially as someone who came from Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2, I can definitely understand why it may be more important for us to have some sort of battle pass, because developers do need to make money in order to continue making the game better and having more characters and things like that. They need to have some sort of way to get their audience to be paying for things. I think also Valorant has a system as well where they have a battle pass going where a lot of the stuff you have to pay for, but all of that is also cosmetic. You have to earn characters through doing like challenges and things like that and just constantly playing, which I wonder if that would be a better system for Overwatch to earn new characters versus having them locked behind the battle pass.
I believe that's what it's going to be after a battle pass ends. But at that point, you're still waiting 60 days in order for the character to even be available without grinding the game.
Yeah, especially then you have to complete the challenges to unlock a character after 60 days after the character's been introduced. That just seems kind of silly.
Yeah, at that point, the meta with the character may even not be available, or they may be nerfed to the ground. And then what's the point of playing this brand new cool character if you can't even really have the beginning access to it?
Exactly. It's no longer a new character at that point. It's just a character you haven't had access to for 60, maybe even 70 days. If you're more of a casual player, and depending on the strength of the challenges, because we don't even know like what the challenges are like yet. It could be like a really high bar that a casual player is just not going to easily be able to do. I mean, like, and even then, let's talk about developers, especially Overwatch 2 launch. I feel like no matter how much we want to defend the free-to-play genre, that launch was just beyond anything anyone would expect from a AAA title game.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, there's still server issues now. I mean, the game's been out for what, a week, 2 weeks at this point. The fact that there are still server issues just speaks to just the infrastructure of it all. Clearly, there's something going on there. They said there were DDoS attacks. Whether you want to believe that or not, that's up to you. I don't really see a reason for them to lie about them being DDoSed, to be honest. But at that point, there's only so many excuses you can make for the game to actually be playable. It's already in early access. People are willing to give Overwatch a benefit of the doubt at this point, I think, still, after all this time. People are still coming back to play the game. You still see streamers like XQC trying to stream the game, which is pretty big, you know? You have all these big streamers actually streaming the game, and it doesn't even work half the time. And I think that's pretty important for a game's success, is for people to actually play the game. So I think if Overwatch really wants to, get back to its glory days of 2016, I think it's really got to just up the servers and get the game up and running first before it can even tackle the other issues of like the monetization as well.
Yeah, definitely think there's a lot of issues when it comes to both, because pay-to-play access and being able to afford to pay a $60 game, but also free-to-play with battle passes and seeing what kind of content you actually get when it comes to having this free-to-play platform. So
I don't hate it. I don't hate free-to-play games as a concept because, again, they make it more accessible. And when you're playing an online multiplayer game, you want the most people possible to be playing it, both as a developer and as a consumer. You want to make sure your queue times are low. And, free-to-play makes that more accessible to everyone. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think as long as you keep cosmetics as the only way to actually fund the game, I think that's by far the best course of action, because it doesn't really interfere with the actual gameplay experience, but people who do want to fund the game and do want to get cool cosmetics, they still can. Without, being paid to win.
Well, I think just on a whole, I don't know. I feel like it's just whichever company wants to do what. I don't think there's anything wrong with either, but I think we'll have to call our discussion for the day. This has been Critical Damage with Mike,
Sam,
And ET.
Hopefully we'll see you guys next time.